You know the saying, everything old is new again? Well, we're going to kind of turn that one sideways. Everything complicated is simple again with tonight's guest. Joel Connelly of SeattlePI.com, Sound Month in Review Time right here on Public Exposure. Mike Seeley is normally with us, but he's out on an assignment, and he'll be with us next month. But Joel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Boy, there sure has been an awful lot. Let's just go straight to the Gulf. A column that you wrote where the Gulf spill is exposing cracks in the oil industry. Let's go to the first quote. This was May the 14th, by the way. Americans still favor expanded offshore drilling by 50% to 38% margin, with 12% undecided, according to a new AP poll. Let's go to the next quote. By a wide margin, however, they disapprove of BP's response to the disaster that has dumped 4 million gallons of oil into the waters, and are the nation's most protective productive source of seafood. Final quote. And this was where you were talking about a court, the federal court. The court found the federal government's Minerals Management Service, BP's rubber stamp in the Gulf, met its legal obligation to consider threats to wildlife. Okay. Those three quotes. Again, May 14th, 4 million gallons is now a little higher, huh?
By a factor of about 6 or 7.
Oh, wow. Now, the public, that was May 14th. Is the public's response now still let's drill in the Gulf regardless?
Amazingly, the polls still show a plurality in favor of drilling, but it depends upon how you drill the people that you're questioning in terms of what they answer. I think there is a widespread recognition that the safety claims have been false, that the federal regulatory agencies have been lapdogs, have been in bed with the industry, in the case of the Minerals Management Service, sometimes literally, and that we very definitely need to find what went wrong, what went on, and enact reforms before we again adopt anything resembling the Sarah Palin philosophy of drill, baby, drill.
You know, and the funny thing about it is that with regard to this Minerals Management Service and a federal agency being in bed with the industry that it's supposed to regulate, that's definitely not the first time. I mean, just right here in the Pacific Northwest, the Beef Council, well, that's a private group, but the regulatory group over beef and the Jack in the Box debacle of a few years ago, but they were in bed with their industry. Is that, if we were to dig deeper, would we find that inside our government?
A friend of mine was sprayed by a 2,4-D over when hunting in the wildlife refuge just north of the Hanford Reservation. Essentially, they were attempting to spraying the herbicide in order to protect nearby crops. And he was an influential person in Seattle and lodged complaints. As it turns out, you saw the State Department of Agriculture rushing to the defense of the people doing the spraying, while the EPA's Enforcement Division tried to do an honest investigation, while a congressman and a U.S. senator from Central Washington were pressuring it not to. So you had a dishonest agency, you had an agency trying to be honest, but being pressured to paper over this.
So we're talking about reforms, and we're going to get something from President Obama just from his speech yesterday here in just a minute. What kind of reforms could we possibly have that can make dishonest people be honest?
Well, first of all, you need an honest evaluation of this, an honest commission. 9/11 Commission is a classic example. The Rogers Commission that probed the culture of NASA after the Challenger disaster. Mm-hmm. And BP was forced to name an honest commission headed by former Secretary of State James Baker with Senator Gordon from our state on it, after the Texas City refinery blast in 2005 that killed, as I recall, 15 people. So if you go over these reports and so on, you find guidelines in terms of how this should not happen again. We don't know the cure at the moment. The situation is to take a long, hard look, and when there is pressure from the industry, you know, let's not dwell about spilled oil, to tell the industry to go to the devil until the facts are fully revealed.
Do we have the speech from the president ready yet? If we do, as soon as we're ready with that, let's go to the president from yesterday.
Bob Graham of Florida and former EPA Administrator Bill Riley. They will lead the National Commission on the BP oil spill in the Gulf, which is now the greatest
Actually, what we're going to need to do on
of
this
its
is we
kind in
need to
our
go a little bit later on in the speech. Okay, let's go instead of that. Let's go to the slides because we've actually got the words up, and where the president is saying, here we are. As a result of this disaster, lives have been lost, businesses have been decimated, communities they're already in great risk. They have great hardship. They're facing the specter of sudden and painful economic dislocations. Untold damage is being done to the environment, and damage that could last for decades. So that's a pretty bleak prospect that the president is painting right now. Is he right?
If you look at the Prince William Sound oil spill, the Exxon Valdez, you will see that he is, if anything, understating the case. In that case, of course, you can still turn over rocks and dig down a little bit on islands in Prince William Sound and still find oil. You have a herring fishery that never really came back. This is 21 years after the spill. Mm-hmm. You also have the fact that the oil company involved, Exxon, was told to pony up $5 billion in punitive damages by a federal court jury in 1994, and ended up fighting this through the appellate procedure up to the Supreme Court, back to the Ninth Circuit, and so on, until in 2009 they got a ruling that reduced the damages, which at that time were down to $2.5 billion, all the way to $500 million. So Exxon was able to make money on the money that it put in escrow, make more than it eventually had to pay out. And of the fisher folk and the native villages and so on, the people who were the plaintiffs in the case, more than 20% of them died while this was being litigated. Ninth Circuit federal appellate judge Russ Wiggins, a Nixon defender on the Judiciary Committee years ago, was one of the judges that heard this case. He died. So you have a situation in which oil is still there, part of the fishery never recovered, and the oil company was able to raise a protracted legal battle using the great Los Angeles law firm of O'Melveny and Myers, arguing essentially that with what Exxon spent on the cleanup, that the oil company had suffered enough.
Wow. Okay, well, let's go to the part two of what the president said. He said, we owe all those who have been harmed, as well as future generations, a full and vigorous accounting of the events that led to what has become the worst oil spill in U.S. history. Only then can we be assured that deepwater drilling can take place safely, and only then can we accept further development of these resources as we transition to a clean energy economy. Okay, I'm hearing that, and I got to tell you, I think blame needs to be assessed in this, and if I'm a victim, and there's a lot of victims, I mean, as the president said, lives have been lost, and accounting's not good enough.
I think you need to go a step beyond and demand that people be made whole. I think already you have the people who are responsible. They're attempting to move this into a friendly federal court in Houston and essentially minimize their exposure. Of course, you have that one law that limits, liability to what is it, $7 to $75 million. And you've had an effort in the U.S. Senate to increase this to $10 billion, or to put no limit on it at all.
That's if it's just mere negligence, right? It's not if there's criminal penalties.
Yeah, under negligence. But the important thing is the Senate moved to take this up. An oil state senator, Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, normally famous for calling global warming a hoax, blocked its consideration. So you essentially have the situation of sanctimonious statements by those responsible on the one hand, legal maneuvers and legislative maneuvers in order to limit the amount of skin that they have to show on the other.
We're going to explore this a little bit more, but first we're going to take a very short break.